My boyfriend insisted on a strictly platonic relationship, convinced that physical desire was a sin. All I did was kiss him, and he sent me to a so-called mental purification program. It worked. I no longer felt any desire for him, but when it came to other men, my desire doubled. Later, when he spotted the hickeys on my collarbone, he completely lost it in public. Do you really have to throw yourself into moral depravity? One of his friends pulled me onto his lap, pressed a kiss to the back of my hand, and laughed. Then I guess I'm guilty. Go ahead and call the cops. Chapter 1. The day I graduated from the mental purification program. I stood on stage as the model graduate and delivered a speech in front of fellow students and their families. I believe true love is a meeting of souls. It should not be bound by the body, nor driven by physical desire. My boyfriend, Marco, was sitting in the audience. I looked directly at his face, maintaining a polite smile while struggling to suppress my disgust. The only reason I was standing here was because of him. 3 months earlier, we had kissed. It was our first kiss. He had wrapped an arm around me, called my name, and, slightly drunk, leaned in and kissed me. I didn't push him away. We had already been together for 5 years. It's not like he was calling someone else's name while kissing me. But the moment he sobered up and realized it was me, revulsion instantly filled his eyes. He shoved me to the floor. Then Marco went to rinse his mouth. I stood at the bathroom door, watching him, my fingers gripping the doorframe so tightly they hurt. Marco, is kissing me really that disgusting? He raised his head and looked at me through the mirror. His gaze was so cold it sent chills down my spine. I've told you before, I'm a Platonist. I find that kind of physical intimacy disgusting. You kissed me, I said quietly. Then why didn't you push me away? He braced both hands against the counter. His fingertips turned white from the force, and everything on the vanity was swept onto the floor. I froze for a moment, then turned and left. I didn't answer him. The whole thing was simply too absurd. By the time he came out of the bathroom, I had already packed my things. Marco, let's break up. He walked past me and glanced at me casually. There's no need. There is. I don't accept your idea of a platonic relationship. I want a normal relationship. Looking at his back, I said word by word. A normal relationship, one that includes sex. The moment those words left my mouth, Marco completely lost control. I never got the chance to break up with him. Instead, I was sent overseas to a mental purification program. They promised that in just 3 months, they could cleanse me of desire. Every student there was a young, attractive woman. Most of their partners were elderly billionaires or wealthy men with serious health issues. The so-called purification program was really just a way to prevent women financially dependent on men from cheating. I was the odd one out, because there was nothing wrong with Marco physically. I had felt that much when we kissed. He had definitely reacted. Yet every time I showed the slightest desire for intimacy, even during something as innocent as watching TV together, he would fly into a rage. He didn't even show up the day my mother died. I went through the funeral and memorial service alone, then asked him for nothing more than a comforting hug. He refused. To avoid me, he even left the house in the middle of the night. The next morning, I received an anonymous text message. It was a photo of a woman sitting on Marco's lap. The memory made me sick. Without warning, I vomited right there in front of everyone. Marco immediately shot to his feet from the audience. Chapter 2. I had to be helped off the stage by one of the instructors from the mental purification program. Marco hurried over and asked what was wrong. I told him I had simply been nervous. As soon as the door closed, the instructor took out a small vial filled with blue liquid. I immediately drank it, suppressing the wave of nausea. Romina, you've always been one of our best students. How could you let yourself dwell on something like that in public? The program had assigned me a Chinese-speaking instructor specifically for me. I smiled helplessly. I wasn't. I was just thinking about my boyfriend cheating on me. The instructor sighed as well. To the outside world, the mental purification program advertised itself as a psychological counseling course. In reality, what made it effective was medication designed to forcibly suppress desire. As soon as a participant developed intimate fantasies about their designated partner, they would begin vomiting uncontrollably. At first, I resisted it, but when I tried imagining other men and felt absolutely nothing, I stopped caring. I didn't care about Marco anymore. I only wanted to leave as soon as possible, so I took far more of the medication than required. Who knew what kind of side effects it might have caused? The moment the door opened, Marco reached for my hand. I instinctively stepped away. He froze for a second, then withdrew his hand and curled his lips into a faint smile. He seemed very pleased with the results of my treatment. Marco decided to take me home. The program gave him an additional course of medication. If Romina's condition becomes unstable, follow the instructions and administer this. Marco asked, "What exactly do you mean by unstable?" But the instructor refused to elaborate, answering only vaguely. Some students experience withdrawal symptoms. The medication will take care of it. Marco brought me back home. He kept me confined inside his villa and assigned people to monitor me around the clock. But I showed no unusual behavior. Half a month later, he finally took me out. The private lounge was spacious, illuminated by flowing strips of light that cast shifting shadows across every face. It was the first time I had ever met his friends. "So you finally decided to bring her out?" Marco sat down and patted the seat beside him. I took the seat next to him. Romina just got back from overseas. I didn't want her getting bored at home. A beam of light swept across the face of a woman sitting opposite us. She was the woman from that photograph. Vicky, Marco's childhood friend from a family that perfectly matched his own in status and background. She handed me a drink and asked curiously. I'd heard about programs like this before and mentioned it to Marco once. Can they really get rid of desire? So she was the one who had encouraged Marco to send me there. And apparently everyone here knew where I had been. I drained the glass in one gulp and turned toward Marco. Then I placed the empty glass upside down on the table. Of course, I simply don't feel any desire for you anymore. Chapter 3. What do you mean by that? Marco stood up. I mean, let's break up. Vicky quietly muttered. Does this mean the treatment didn't work after all? Marco's brows furrowed. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms. His other hand settled against my waist. The reaction came instantly. A violent spasm rose from my stomach to my throat. I shoved him away. I barely had time to cover my mouth before vomit spilled through my fingers and splattered onto the carpet. Everyone froze in shock, including Marco. Only I was used to it by now. I calmly pulled out a few tissues and wiped my hands clean. Happy now? Marco's expression darkened even further. You can't even interact normally with men anymore. And you still want to break up with me? Yes, I still do. I turned and walked away. This time, Marco didn't stop me. Perhaps the physical test had reassured him, because his mood quickly settled. Romina, no one but me will ever accept you. If you walk out that door today, don't come begging me to take you back. I never looked back. Supporting myself against the hallway wall, I watched the lights blur and sway before my eyes. My vision grew increasingly dizzy. I immediately realized something was wrong. There had been something in Vicky's drink. Hearing footsteps behind me, I forced myself to stay alert and quickened my pace without drawing attention. Then, at the corner of the hallway, I crashed into someone's chest. Instinctively, I tried to pull away, but then I stopped and waited. The familiar physical rejection never came. Instead, I felt an unexpected sense of relief, as though the drug's effects were easing. Romina, how much longer are you planning to hold on to me? The man's face was backlit, a teasing smile playing at his lips. It was Ruben Fu, the heir to the Fu family. He and Marco had once been friends. I'd even heard that Ruben had spoken up for me before they eventually fell out. Ruben pressed the back of his hand against my forehead. Looks like you've been drugged. I'll take you to Marco. No. I looked up at him, my voice steady. We broke up, and he can't help me anyway. Ruben tilted his head and studied me with an amused smile. One hand hovered lightly at my waist, ready to steady me if I fell. Then what do you suggest we do? His voice was quiet, yet somehow, every word seemed especially dangerous to my overheated mind. Gathering the last of my strength, I wrapped my arms around his neck. My lips brushed his cheek before lingering near his ear. Ruben, can you handle it? His arm tightened around my waist, lowering his gaze. He looked at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Romina, you didn't even ask whether I wanted to. You skipped straight to asking whether I could. I can't take this anymore. Please. Chapter 4. Ruben's bed was large and impossibly soft. The two of us sank into it, wrapped together like butterflies trapped inside a cocoon. Our bodies formed the center, our limbs like delicate wings. Every slight tremble felt like life itself struggling to take flight. Ruben leaned close and asked softly, "Romina, are you sure about this?" But my mind was already a haze. Pointing at the ceiling, I mumbled, "It would have been nice if there were mirrors up there. I want to see you." A shadow flickered across Ruben's eyes. He covered my mouth with his hand. "All right, I'll take that as a yes." His brows were slightly furrowed. His lower lip caught between his teeth. His face was even redder than mine. "Is this your first time?" For a moment, he looked ready to stop. I caught his hand and pulled it back. "Don't go." Our fingers intertwined, tightening and loosening around each other. Perhaps it was the drugs. I responded to Ruben with an enthusiasm far beyond what was normal. I clung to him tirelessly, over and over again. By the time dawn began to break, and sunlight slipped through the curtains, I gradually regained my senses. A first time probably shouldn't have been so reckless. Yet I still couldn't resist reaching for Ruben again. In the end, I passed out. Ruben took me to his family's private hospital, where I underwent a complete medical examination. The results revealed that I had consumed excessive amounts of a prohibited drug. My hormone levels were severely disrupted. As a result, I would remain in a state of heightened libido for some time. Only then did I understand what the purification program had meant by an unstable condition. If I had stayed with Marco and continued taking their desire-suppressing medication, everything would have appeared normal. I strongly suspected that these withdrawal symptoms were deliberately designed to keep graduates dependent on the program. After all, every graduate's partner ended up relying on their medication long-term. I told Ruben everything about the purification program. "Marco's out of his mind," Ruben snapped. How come I never saw him acting like some hardcore Platonist before? Crushing the test results in his hand, he added, "Just prescribe her something." The doctor stared at him for a moment before laughing. "She doesn't need medication. She just needs relief." Huh? Ruben froze. "Her case is fairly serious." The doctor continued, "If anything, I'd recommend prescribing something for you." I was drinking water when I nearly choked. Heat instantly spread across my cheeks and ears. Ruben turned to look at me and let out a long sigh. Then he faced the doctor helplessly. "Fine, then prescribe me something." Ruben and I came to an agreement. "Romina, once your body recovers, we'll end this arrangement." His attitude was reasonable, and, if I was being honest, exactly what I wanted. While waiting for him to pick up the prescription, I unexpectedly ran into Marco at the hospital. He saw me too. His expression darkened instantly. "Romina, you actually followed me here? What exactly are you trying to do?" He reached for my arm. I immediately stepped back. His hand barely brushed mine, yet the nausea hit at once. "Marco, I didn't follow you. I'm waiting for someone." Bending over, I started dry heaving. Marco froze completely. From where he stood, he had a clear view of my collarbone. Dark and light marks were scattered across the skin. His fist clenched, then slammed violently into the wall. Even his voice shook. "That's impossible. You can't even touch other men. You slept with someone else? Who was it?" Chapter 5. All eyes immediately turned toward us. Marco reached out as if he wanted to touch me, then slowly lowered his hand again. "Do you really have to throw yourself into moral depravity?" There he went again, losing his mind. An arm wrapped firmly around my waist. The next second, I was pulled backward into a warm embrace. I looked up and met Ruben's eyes. He lifted my hand, brushed a kiss against it, then smiled at Marco. "Guess I'm the criminal here. Go ahead and call the cops." A smirk tugged at his lips. Marco's eyes turned bloodshot. His fists clenched as he stared at the intimacy between Ruben and me. "Why can he touch you?" Leaning comfortably against Ruben, I raised my gaze to Marco. "Marco, thanks to you, you're the only man who makes me sick." "No, that's not true." He immediately protested. "It shouldn't be like this." None of the others ever reacted this way. His naivety made me laugh. "You really think the women who leave that place would tell anyone?" The purification program was built on one enormous collective lie. Not a single woman who graduated ever tried to expose it. Because almost everyone ended up satisfied. Wealthy men who had lost their sexual function believed they had finally found a way to secure emotional and physical loyalty. The women only had to give up intimacy with their designated partners in exchange for trust, security, and a comfortable life. And the people running the program made endless amounts of money. Ruben guided me to a nearby seat and placed a bag full of medication on my lap. "Hold this for me." Then he slowly walked toward Marco, grabbing him by the collar. Ruben's expression turned cold and dangerous. "Marco, I knew there was something wrong with you. I should never have given you that necklace." The necklace Ruben was referring to was my mother's keepsake. It was also the reason Marco and I first met. 5 years earlier, when my mother was gravely ill, she handed me an antique necklace and told me to try selling it in one of the city's wealthy districts to cover her medical expenses. Holding it tightly, I asked, "Is it really worth that much?" "Fairly valuable, I suppose." She squeezed my hand and spoke calmly. "Maybe not enough to cure me, but enough to take care of you for the rest of your life." I spent 3 days trying to sell it outside an upscale neighborhood. On the third day, rain poured from the sky. Ruben happened to drive past and rolled down his window. He paid $1 million for it on the spot and told me to hurry home. Only later did I learn that Marco had been in the car with him. The moment he saw the necklace, he wanted it. Ruben simply handed it over to him afterward. Not long after that, Marco found me. "You must be Romina. Would you consider becoming my sponsored companion? I can send your mother overseas for treatment." "Sorry, I don't sell my body. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your body." And so I agreed. The story that followed sounded like something straight out of a melodrama. At first, he toyed with me, teased me, kept me at arm's length. Then one day, he claimed he had fallen in love with me. Marco lowered his pride and pursued me relentlessly. No one would have doubted his sincerity, on the condition that ours would be a platonic relationship. We got together. The night I tried to break up with him, it wasn't because I couldn't accept a platonic relationship. It was because I couldn't accept that he chose to be platonic only with me. And that realization filled me with unease. A deep, overwhelming unease. Chapter 6. Ruben and Marco got into a fight at the hospital. Ruben Fu threw the first punch. Since the hospital belonged to the Fu family, even the security guards were clearly taking his side. So Ruben naturally had the upper hand. Marco climbed to his feet and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Romina, come back with me." Standing beside Ruben, I lifted the bag of medication in my hand and gave it a small shake. "No, I've got other things to do with Ruben." "Romina, are you doing this to get back at me?" I turned at the sound of his voice. Marco stood among the passing crowd, a cut still visible on his face. His lips pressed into a tight line. "If that's the case, you've already succeeded." I shook my head. "There's no need." I returned his own words to him. In the underground parking garage, I ran into a familiar face. Vicky was wearing sunglasses and holding a bouquet while checking her makeup in a convex safety mirror. She looked like she was visiting a patient. "Is Marco's father hospitalized here?" "How did you guess?" Ruben looked surprised. I smiled slightly. "The flowers are for visiting an elder, and she's paying a lot of attention to her makeup, which means she's hoping to see a man." Ruben glanced at me as I lifted an eyebrow proudly. As we walked past Vicky, our reflections appeared in the mirror behind her. She spotted us immediately. The mirrored versions of Ruben and me seemed to come alive at the same moment. Turning to meet her gaze, the bouquet slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. I stopped, picked it up, and handed it back to her. She immediately apologized, speaking in a meek voice while repeatedly glancing at Ruben's expression. "Romina, I swear I didn't know there was anything wrong with the drink that day. I really didn't mean it." She didn't actually think she'd done anything wrong. She was simply afraid of offending Ruben. I placed the bouquet back into her arms. "You like Marco, don't you? You can have him. I wish the two of you a lifetime of happiness together." I genuinely meant it. Unfortunately, Marco stepped out of the elevator at that exact moment and overheard Vicky's apology. By the time Ruben and I drove away, the two of them were arguing fiercely. Marco slapped her. Vicky immediately slapped him right back. Honestly, they suited each other. The moment we stepped inside the house, Ruben wrapped his arms around me from behind and pinned me lightly against the entryway cabinet. Lowering his head, He kissed me hard. I pressed a hand against his chest. You know we're not actually. I know. He cut me off. You don't need to remind me. Feeling awkward, I explained. The way you're looking at me feels very affectionate. Ruben lowered his head and laughed. I look at dogs affectionately too. That left me with nothing to say. Still, one thing had to be admitted. Ruben's customer service was exceptional. Off the bed, he was the spoiled young master of a wealthy family. On the bed, he was still a young master, just a much more dedicated one. Wrapped in a bathrobe, Ruben ran his fingers through his damp hair. Contentment lingered in the corners of his eyes. What are you thinking about? I was wondering how much I should pay for your services. I don't need money. He paused before a smile tugged at his lips. But I can't exactly let you enjoy everything for free. How about this? Every time you do one small favor for me in return. Huh? Ruben sat on the carpet with his back resting against the side of the bed. His posture was relaxed and unusually gentle. Meanwhile, I knelt on the mattress, blow-drying his hair. Warm air brushed across the back of my hand. This was the favor Ruben wanted. The evening sunlight flowed softly through the room, brushing across my shoulders and illuminating the side of his face. For once, everything felt peaceful, until Marco called. I switched the phone to speaker and turned the volume all the way up. Only then could I barely hear him over the hum of the hairdryer. Romina. Nothing ever happened between Vicky and me. The photo was taken when I was drunk. She staged it on purpose. His voice sounded strained. Okay. I responded casually. Last time, I overreacted. I sent you overseas because I couldn't stand the thought of losing you. Okay. And what are you doing right now? Ruben leaned his head back and met my eyes. Then he answered for me. She's blow-drying my hair. A loud crashing sound came from the other end of the line. Then Marco's voice exploded through the speaker, half shouting and half crying. Can't you two do literally anything else? Ruben, don't touch her. I wouldn't even bear to hurt a single finger of hers. Ruben burst out laughing. I sighed helplessly. Marco, stop acting crazy. What I do is my choice. You have no right to interfere. I was about to hang up. Then Marco suddenly blurted out, Romina, I really love you. Let's get back together. Chapter 7. I don't love you, Marco. Back then, when I had nowhere else to turn, you helped my mother and me. I've always remembered that kindness. Now we're even. People never forget the hand that reaches out to them when they're at their lowest. I was no exception. At the time, I felt like I couldn't refuse him. He had been good to me, and I thought, what if we were actually right for each other? So I gave him a chance to love me or hurt me. Now it seemed he had chosen the latter. Marco was silent for a long time. Romina, we're not even. Your mother's keepsake is still with me. He was talking about the necklace that had been sold. I told Marco to keep it. I had no intention of seeing him again, but he insisted on returning it. Fine, then send a courier and have it delivered to Ruben's villa. No, I'll bring it myself. Half an hour later, Marco was standing at the villa entrance. I asked Ruben to go downstairs and collect it for me. He returned shortly afterward, opening the velvet jewelry box. I ran my fingers over the necklace and remembered what my mother had once said. A necklace valuable enough to take care of me for the rest of my life. Ruben, I have terrible judgment. How much do you think this necklace is worth? Ruben wrapped an arm around my waist from behind, his palm warm against my skin. Your judgment is terrible. As far as market value goes, it's probably worth a few $100,000 at most. A few $100,000 couldn't support me for a lifetime. Time to focus on more important things. The lights suddenly dimmed. By the time I snapped back to reality, Ruben's face was already inches away. Sometime in the middle of the night, I collapsed onto the carpet and shoved Ruben's head away with my foot, demanding that he get me some water. As I glanced outside, I noticed a lonely figure standing beneath the street lamp. Marco was still downstairs. Ruben didn't seem concerned. Oh, right. He said he was going to wait for you to come down. I accidentally forgot to mention it. It's fine. That's his choice. Everyone has the freedom to punish themselves. After drinking some water, I climbed back into bed. Ruben immediately moved closer. Don't want me kissing you anymore? I stared at him in a daze. Which one of us is actually sick? He laughed. Maybe we're both sick in our own ways. A few days later, I went to the hospital, standing outside a VIP room. I looked through the window at the elderly man lying quietly in bed with an oxygen mask covering his face. On the way, I ran into the doctor Ruben had introduced me to before. He was actually one of the hospital's vice directors. He arranged another physical examination for me. The results have improved significantly. Looks like Ruben's in excellent shape. I could only offer an awkward smile before asking about Marco's father's condition. The doctor told me he probably had less than 6 months left. Ruben happened to be nearby and arrived shortly afterward. In less than 3 months, I'm confident Romina's condition will return to normal. You're sure? The doctor looked puzzled. Mr. Fu, would you like me to bring in a few more specialists for another opinion? Ruben studied him for a moment without answering. Instead, he took my hand and led me into an empty office. Why did you come to the hospital alone? Are you feeling unwell? Or did I hurt you somehow? Although he sounded concerned, he didn't seem particularly happy. Neither. I took a deep breath and looked up at him. Can you help me with something? Here? Calmly, he removed his watch and began undoing his cufflinks. I froze. Then my face instantly grew hot. Not that kind of help. Did he ever think about anything else? Ruben pressed his lips together. Sorry. I assumed that was the only thing you'd ever need me for. He didn't sound particularly sorry. I slowly stepped closer and lowered my voice. I want you to help me do a paternity test. Between me and Peter. Chapter 8. A flash of shock crossed Ruben's eyes. You think? This is insane. I mean, Marco. We'll know once the test is done. Ruben's expression grew serious. He grabbed his jacket and prepared to leave. I stopped him. Wait. This office is always empty. Doesn't anyone use it? Ruben paused at the door and looked back at me with a helpless smile. This is my office. I just don't come here very often. I nodded, bracing my hands behind me. I lightly hopped onto the desk. Then we can stay here. Ruben turned around and stared at me. The hand resting on the doorknob slowly slid downward. A crisp click echoed through the room as the lock engaged. A week later, I received the DNA report. I really was Peter's illegitimate daughter, Marco's half-sister. Suddenly, countless things that had never made sense finally did. Why my mother had claimed that a necklace worth only a few $100,000 could support me for a lifetime. Why Marco had turned a single necklace into a twisted game that masqueraded as sponsorship but was really revenge. Why, when my mother was transferred to the United States for treatment, everything had happened so quickly, from emergency discharge to boarding a private jet. And why a working-class woman had never questioned any of it. 5 years of madness finally cleared before my eyes. For the first time, I saw everything from Marco's perspective. He had been sitting in that car, looking at the necklace, when he realized the girl standing in the rain was his father's illegitimate daughter. His own mother had taken her life after discovering his father's infidelity only a few years after giving birth to him, and so he decided to take revenge on that daughter. First, he wouldn't allow the necklace to fall into anyone else's hands. Second, he would send her mother, his father's mistress, overseas. And finally, he would keep her close enough to control. I gripped the report so tightly that it crumpled. Then I laughed, and kept laughing until tears started falling. I'd always believed that, at least once, he had genuinely helped me. Marco, you were right. We were never even. I put on the necklace, dressed the way my mother used to, and went to the hospital. In the inpatient wing, I ran into Peter. The moment he saw the necklace around my neck, he became visibly emotional. He demanded to know where it had come from, then asked if I knew a woman named Elise. She was my mother. She passed away. I helped Peter back to his hospital bed. His gaze lingered on my face. There was unmistakable affection in his eyes. You look so much like her. Another DNA test was performed, and this time, Peter acknowledged me as his daughter. I began visiting him regularly. He loved listening to stories about my mother. I told him she had never remarried, that she never spoke about my father, that she would often sit at home staring at the necklace for hours, that even during our poorest years, she had never considered selling it. Every story brought tears to Peter's eyes. Every single one was a lie. I saw Marco again, in front of Peter. We pretended not to know each other, but when I went to the restroom, he silently followed me inside and locked the door behind him. Romina, now you know why I struggled. It wasn't that I didn't want to be with you. Enough. I cut him off. Are you seriously sick in the head? Marco's eyes were red. I thought, after giving the necklace back, we could finally be a family. He had completely lost his mind. He reached out, trying to touch my face. I didn't move. I simply stared at him coldly. You know I'll throw up. His hand froze in midair. He closed his eyes. A tear slipped from the corner of one eye. I was wrong. Romina, I missed my chance. I shouldn't have overthought everything. Your mother is gone. My father will be gone soon too. You were never supposed to find out. I could hardly believe he was still this delusional. I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. The sharp sound echoed through the room. Marco stared at me in shock. A vivid handprint slowly appeared on his cheek. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A genuinely happy laugh. See? You can hit me. That's okay. We can still touch each other. You can hit me if you want. Chapter 9. That slap gave him hope. Marco started trying to force me to hit him again. I pounded on the door and called for help. The commotion attracted half the hospital. Security guards broke the door open and got me out. Peter thought Marco had been bullying me. He grabbed a vase from the bedside table and hurled it at him. Blood streamed down Marco's forehead, running past his eyebrows and onto his cheeks and chin. Without changing expression, Marco casually wiped it away with a tissue and tossed it into a trash bin. It's fine, Dad. Once you're dead, we'll finally be a family. Peter nearly passed out from anger. After hearing about the incident, Ruben banned Marco from entering the hospital. He started taking me out to movies, art exhibitions, equestrian competitions. Small things like these had become the price he collected for his services. I feel like we're dating. Under the warm glow of streetlights, Ruben walked beside me. He turned his head, slightly frowning. I don't know about you, but I have been dating recently. I don't want a relationship right now. Then think of it this way. Even premium equipment needs regular maintenance. With both hands tucked into his pockets, Ruben grinned shamelessly. One day, Peter caught Ruben and me together. His aged, cloudy eyes immediately brightened. He told me to hold on to Ruben no matter what and marry into the Fu family as soon as possible. After all, the Fu family was one of the country's most powerful dynasties, and Ruben Fu was their only heir. Rotating an apple with a fruit knife, I asked casually, Father, were you happy with Miss Zhao? His expression stiffened. That's different. A man should marry beneath his status. A woman should marry above hers. After Marco's outburst, Peter's condition deteriorated rapidly. He knew it himself. The day I left his room, I overheard him calling a lawyer. I guessed he was changing his will. I had looked into Peter's history online. Before meeting Marco's mother, Isolde, he had been a speculator. For a time, he had been successful. Then he lost everything. The first money he ever earned had been used to buy that necklace for my mother. After going bankrupt, he broke up with her and married Isolde instead. The Zhao family invested in him and gave him the chance to rebuild his empire. The Zhaos were old money, a family whose power had endured for generations. Even after Isolde's death, the Su group was still effectively controlled by the Zhao family. No wonder Marco Su could treat his father with such open contempt. He was the Zhao family's biological grandson. The current head of the Zhao family was his uncle. Seen from another perspective, Peter had essentially married into the Zhao family. That was why he remained obsessed with my mother. She had been the only woman who had truly belonged to him. And when a man believes he sacrificed his pride to achieve success, he doesn't feel gratitude. He convinces himself that everything he gained was rightfully his, that the world owed him. Events unfolded exactly as I expected. 2 months later, Peter died. At the funeral, the lawyer announced the contents of the will. All of Peter's assets would be inherited by his daughter, Isabella. Silence filled the funeral hall. Almost everyone instinctively turned to look at Marco, dressed in a black overcoat. He slowly pulled at the corner of his mouth, revealing a bizarre smile. Isabella, how wonderful. Now we're finally family. Chapter 10. The funeral still ended in complete chaos. Some of Marco's friends had attended as well. After one of them recognized me and casually brought up my history with Marco, the two men got into a fight. Only when members of the Zhao family arrived did Marco finally stop causing a scene. Ruben held an umbrella over me as we walked toward the exit. As we passed by, I glanced at a stern-looking middle-aged man. Following my gaze, Ruben looked over as well. That's Cody Zhao, the head of the Zhao family and Marco's uncle. He's Marco's real backing. Otherwise, I never would have known Marco in the first place. Is he more powerful than you? I asked out of curiosity. For once, Ruben was completely stumped. He cleared his throat awkwardly. My father is. We walked beneath the umbrella, laughing together as the noise and drama faded behind us. I became a major shareholder in the Sioux Group. At the same time, Marco was stripped of his executive position. He didn't get angry. He didn't fight back. He simply begged for forgiveness over and over again. I just want you to stay with me. I won't ask for anything else. Whatever you like about Ruben, I can learn. You can even do to me everything I've ever done to you. One day, he stood in the company break room and swallowed every pill the purification program had ever given him. He ended up hospitalized. Because of that, Cody Zhao came to see me. Miss Romina, Marco genuinely loves you. I hope you'll reconsider. Though already in his 40s, Cody remained remarkably handsome. His authority seemed almost innate. I know you're not Ruben's girlfriend, just his bed partner. He stopped looking at me and took a sip of coffee. Miss Romina, you're now one of the legal representatives of the Sioux Group. I could bury you in debt you could never repay in a single quarter of an hour. I believe you'll make the same choice your father made. I took a document from my bag and placed it in front of him. I'm afraid I'll disappoint you, Mr. Zhao. Not long ago, I had returned to the house where Marco and I once lived. Besides collecting my personal documents, I had also stolen Marco's toothbrush. Mr. Zhao, you know how it is. When people are dying, they tend to tell their loved ones everything. For the first time, Cody's expression shifted. His hand immediately pressed down on the report. The words printed there were unmistakable. Marco and Peter, paternity excluded. They don't prove anything. His voice remained calm. That's true. I nodded. Mr. Zhao can choose whether Marco discovers the truth about his identity, or whether he simply loses a woman who never loved him. I lowered my gaze and took another sip of coffee. I believe you'd make the same choice. A long silence followed. Cody stared at the report. Then, almost as if speaking to himself, he asked, why? Even if he isn't your brother, you still don't love him? No, because he never respected me. Cody's head snapped up. Anger surged through his eyes. His coffee cup crashed onto the table. Miss Romina, the solution I proposed earlier was the legal one. At that moment, his phone screen lit up. It was a call from Ruben's father. Cody, is that young lady from the Sioux family with you? Cody glanced at me before regaining his composure. Yes, we're just having a chat. She'll be heading back shortly. Just before the call disconnected, I could vaguely hear Ruben shouting in the background. What chat? This is kidnapping. I'm calling the police right now. I couldn't help smiling when Cody escorted me outside. The sea breeze nearly knocked me off balance. Only then did I realize the seemingly ordinary cafe wasn't on land at all. It had been built aboard a massive ship floating out at sea. Chapter 11. Cody handed me back to Ruben. Ruben anxiously checked me over to make sure I wasn't hurt. So fond of each other? When you two get married, I'll make sure to give you a huge wedding gift. Cody patted him on the shoulder and turned to leave. Ruben took me home. Something was off about him. He turned off the lights and didn't say a word. It wasn't until I felt something cool and damp on my back that I finally realized. Ruben, are you crying? In the darkness, his voice sounded muffled. Yeah, I'm a little scared. In the dark. I took his hand and leaned in to kiss him. Does that make you feel any better? Are you trying to make me cry even harder? It was a very, very long time later before I learned why Ruben had been afraid. Because Marco's mother, Isolde, had jumped into the sea and taken her own life there. Marco would never know. The affair that had caused his parents endless arguments had not involved his father at all. I heard that after Marco was discharged from the hospital, he kept trying to come find me. But Cody stopped him every time, with his usual decisive methods. Cody set a few traps and quickly forced Marco out of the Sioux group. Everything Marco had once possessed was taken away almost overnight. His attempts at resistance disappeared without a trace. Not long afterward, Cody arranged for him to become engaged to Vicky. Vicky even mailed me a wedding invitation. I was speechless. The next time I saw Marco, he had run away from his own engagement party. He waited outside Ruben's house. When we finally returned, he burst out from behind a flower bed. "Romina, I won't marry her. If it weren't for her, we would still be together. Romina, you love me, even after everything I did to you. You stayed with me for 5 years. That's because you loved me." His custom-made suit had been torn by branches and thorns. He looked utterly disheveled, tears and snot running down his face. Yet he kept listing what he believed were proofs of my love for him, as if some long-forgotten memories had suddenly awakened. "You loved me. You let me hold you. You let me kiss you. You even slept with me. I don't care about anything else anymore. I can give you a normal relationship." I stood there in silence. Yes, he could. Marco had made the most fatal mistake of all. He only ordered a paternity test between Peter and me. He never tested his own DNA against mine. Perhaps it was a subconscious act of self-preservation. If he had been as obsessed then as he was now, perhaps fate might have shown him mercy at that moment. No, the solution was never that extreme. Marco had always believed that his father had an affair after marriage and that I was the result. But if we simply compared the timeline, countless inconsistencies would have become obvious. The problem was that, not once during those 5 years, did he ever choose to be honest with me. Chapter 12. In the end, Marco was dragged away by Cody's men. He was sent abroad to recuperate. On the day of the engagement, Vicky was abandoned at the venue. She demanded that the engagement be called off. But nothing came of it. 3 months later, Ruben took me back to the hospital for a follow-up examination. "Ruben, do you remember our agreement?" Keeping his eyes on the road, he nodded. "I remember. Once you've recovered, we'll end this relationship." It was the same vice director as before, holding the test results. Just as he was about to speak, Ruben interrupted him. "Wait, your judgment isn't reliable. Get the director here instead." The vice director looked baffled, but he complied. Soon, the hospital director arrived. After learning about the situation, he picked up the report, looked at Ruben and me, and his expression turned serious. "Based on the examination results, it may take another 1 or 2 years before your condition is fully stabilized." The vice director looked at the report, then at the director, confusion written all over his face. Ruben rested a hand on the desk. 1 or 2 years, and she'll be cured? For some patients, it could take 7 or 8 years. Even 10 or more years isn't impossible. We'll have to see the follow-up results. I studied Ruben and asked hesitantly, "If I go to another hospital, will I get the same result?" Both the director and vice director lowered their heads. Ruben cleared his throat. "Whichever hospital you choose, I'll go with you. What if I go by myself? Then let me know beforehand." He paused. "I'll make a phone call." I moved out of Ruben's house. Not long afterward, I returned to work at the Sioux group. The pressure I faced was immense. Without Marco serving as the link between them, Cody Zhao began separating the Sioux group from the Zhao group. He withdrew most of the high-quality assets. It was his return on investment for Peter. At the shareholders' meeting, he shook my hand with a smile. "Good luck. It's all yours now." What he left me was an absolute disaster. Those were very difficult days. But I held on. It was nearly 4 in the morning before I finally finished working. Then I received a message from Ruben on WeChat. "I'm having withdrawal symptoms. I want to see you." I drove home in the middle of the night. Ruben was sitting outside my door, asleep with his head lowered. The moment I opened the door, he woke up. He walked inside naturally, barely able to keep his eyes open. "I've been waiting for you for a long time. What do you need from me?" Ruben looked at me. "I have something to tell you." He took a deep breath. "Back then, I said your necklace was only worth a few $100,000, but the first time we met, I offered you 1 million for it. So you don't treat money like money?" I casually gave that necklace to Marco because the necklace wasn't what interested me. "You mean you were interested in me back then? Then why didn't you come find me?" "It was only a little interest." He smiled faintly. But by the time I saw you again, you were already with Marco. He looked at me steadily, his gaze unwavering. If Marco hadn't been in my car that day, maybe we would have been together a long time ago. Ruben let out a long breath. All right, that's everything I wanted to say. I thought about it for a while, frowning slightly. I'd like to clarify something. What you just said. Were you confessing to me? Ruben was drinking water. He immediately choked and started coughing, setting down the glass. He spoke in a resentful tone. I was saying that I love you. He looked straight at me. So, do you accept it? Can we start a new relationship? Chapter 13. I wasn't planning to start a new relationship so soon. After everything I had been through, any normal person would need some time to recover. I had never been the brave type. Ruben and I looked into each other's eyes. If you're just not used to it, we can keep our old arrangement. He froze for a moment. His pupils widened slightly, and the hope shining in his eyes faded little by little. Then forget it. He left. I knew Ruben was the kind of man who stood above everyone else. Once he walked away, he wouldn't look back. So this was the end. The empty apartment felt unbearable. Every second dragged by like torture. I don't know how much time passed before I finally rushed out the door without having fully made up my mind. I frantically pressed the elevator button. The red floor numbers crawled upward at an agonizing pace. Finally, the elevator doors opened. Ruben stood in the corner, leaning against the wall with his head lowered. Neither of us had expected to see the other again. He looked at me. I looked at him. Why haven't you left? I got dumped and forgot to press a floor. He glanced at me, his eyes slightly red. So I've just been riding up and down. But then I ran into you. His voice was so hoarse it was almost muffled. Taking out the trash? I really like you. Think about it a little longer, and I'll take it down for you. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, he reached out and stopped them. Kidding. I'll take it down for you anyway. I pressed the open door button as well. Ruben, I thought about it for a long time. Let's be together. Let's start a new relationship. He froze. Then a slow smile spread across his face. He pulled me tightly into his arms and raised his wrist to look at his watch. You thought about it for 15 minutes. So? Nothing. That's a really long time. Later, Ruben told me that those had been the longest 15 minutes of his life. And when the elevator doors opened, those same 15 minutes became the most worthwhile wait of his life. As for me, during those 15 minutes, I only figured out one thing. I had fallen for Ruben. Ruben claimed he had noticed it long ago. When? I asked. In the hospital office. You were comforting me, pinching my chin. He couldn't help but laugh. And you only agreed because you knew it was my office. That's when I thought, I might end up marrying this woman. Realization suddenly dawned on me. So that's why you were so quick that time? No. He immediately denied it. That was because it was almost the end of the workday. I didn't want anyone to hear us. Chapter 14. Half a year later, Ruben and I got engaged. The 5 years of my life that had been delayed seemed to be made up all at once because of him. Dressed in an evening gown and holding a wine glass, I linked arms with Ruben as we toasted and exchanged greetings with influential business leaders and social elites. I looked up at him, my eyes filled with love. Someone snapped a candid photo of that moment, and it quickly went viral online. But no one knew that once upon a time, I had stood in the pouring rain for 5 hours, and only Ruben's Maybach had stopped in front of me. Actually, before that, I had met Marco once. It was a sunny day. I approached a couple who looked wealthy. The young man seemed interested in what I had to say, but the woman immediately pulled him away. Marco. People on the street are all scammers. They were Marco and Vicky. Fate had desperately tried to push me toward Marco. But somehow, our paths never truly connected. On the night of my engagement, my phone rang. It was Marco. Romina. Happy engagement. Ruben answered the call for me. Marco. She's exhausted from the engagement party and already fell asleep. Marco paused. Was she happy today? Ruben shot back immediately. Other than you. Who wouldn't be happy on their engagement day? Half asleep. I heard the conversation and instinctively hugged Ruben's arm. I'm happy. A warm kiss gently landed on my forehead. Later, Marco returned to the country. He was supposed to marry Vicky, but I no longer cared about those things. I only hoped he would stop interfering with my life. However, what happened afterward became such a huge public scandal that I couldn't avoid hearing about it. The day before Marco and Vicky's wedding, Marco's car suddenly lost control and crashed into the roadside barrier. Vicky, who was in the passenger seat, suffered severe injuries on the spot. The police investigation later confirmed that Marco had been driving. The two had been arguing in the car, and the argument eventually turned physical, leading to the tragedy. Based on the surveillance footage and evidence, Marco should have gone to prison, but Cody produced Marco's psychiatric evaluation reports, along with nearly 3 years of psychological treatment records. The highly publicized lawsuit that followed dragged on for 4 or 5 years. On television, I saw Vicky attending court in a wheelchair after becoming permanently paralyzed in both legs. She hated Marco with every fiber of her being. Yet the final verdict was not what she wanted, because Marco had truly lost his mind. In truth, I had suspected something was wrong with his mental state a long time ago. Now he no longer recognized me. The only thing he kept demanding was the necklace. Eventually, Cody came to Ruben and me. No matter how outrageous the price is, I'll pay it. I want that necklace back. I gave the necklace to him. In return, I asked him to look after me a little more in the business world. Holding Ruben's hand tightly, I sighed. What should I do? I hate Marco, but I still hope he gets better. Ruben said that was perfectly normal. He hoped so too. Chapter 15. I married Ruben. Cody attended our wedding. True to his promise, he gave us an envelope with an astonishingly generous cash gift. After the wedding, he took Marco abroad. Vicky gradually disappeared from our lives as well. In that immense and tragic story, the only people who found happiness were Ruben and me. Back then, I had changed my surname to reconnect with my biological family. Now, I had changed it back to Liu. What was once the Su family business had become the Liu family business, and it was thriving. The Fu family gradually came to accept me too. It was only after I married into the family that I learned how much effort Ruben had secretly put in just to marry me. In the 3rd year of our marriage, Ruben and I welcomed our adorable daughter, Tina. She looked a lot like Ruben, cool and reserved on the outside, but unbelievably sweet when she spoke. Ruben was very concerned about that. When you start dating someday, your taste in men had better be better than your mother's. Honey, are you saying my taste isn't good? Ruben had spoiled me so well that I had learned how to act cute and get my way, and he seemed completely helpless against it. Later, when Tina was 5, we took her to Paris for a vacation, wearing a little white dress. She ran happily through the streets of France. In her hands was a bouquet wrapped in newspaper, with 5 white roses tucked inside. Mom, a handsome uncle gave this to me. Inside the bouquet was a card written in elegant handwriting. I won't disturb you, but I still love you. Thank you for the kiss you once gave me. It had to be Marco. I thought perhaps he had finally healed. Ruben picked up our daughter and gently tapped her nose. Was he more handsome than Daddy? No way. Daddy is the most handsome of all. Tina was exceptionally good at charming men. When Tina was 13, Cody was sent to prison. Rumor had it that Marco had submitted a large amount of criminal evidence. Cody was charged with multiple serious crimes, including insider trading, unlawful imprisonment, and more. Only then did I become certain that Marco knew the whole truth. After that, he never returned to the country. When Tina had her first boyfriend, I personally gave her the talk about sex and relationships. When you're the one taking the initiative, intimacy is an authority granted by the words I love you. When you're the one being pursued, learn from Ruben. If you don't love someone, then no matter what they offer you, don't accept it. And finally, there are a few rare situations where it has nothing to do with love, like the relationship Ruben and I had at the very beginning. In those cases, don't overthink it. You're simply exchanging rights and choices, nothing more.